We speak about artificial intelligence in the military domain during this conference, but this technique, of course, is also used in other domains. For example, cultural heritage. Here in the Netherlands, we have the very famous Rijksmuseum that also uses artificial intelligence. And we're very happy that Mr. Robert Erdmann is here with us today to show how the museum actually uses AI. You will shortly give us several interesting, I just saw I was amazed by the preview already. Interactive examples that you developed yourself actually for the museum, including some material analysis of the iconic old masters paintings. Robert Erdmann, you moved to the Netherlands in 2014 permanently to focus full-time on combining as well material science, computer science, and imaging science to help the world access in regard to cultural heritage and understand cultural heritage. You're a senior scientist at the Rijksmuseum, but also a full professor at the University of Amsterdam. Please go ahead. Warm applause.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thanks to the organizers for having me here. As Monty Python used to say, and now for something completely different. So, yeah, I'm not going to give you a lot of theory about AI in cultural heritage, but it surprises a lot of people to hear that artificial intelligence is a big part of the work that we're doing behind the scenes to help the world access, preserve, and understand its cultural heritage at the Rijksmuseum. So I thought it would be interesting to go through several live examples. I'm running these all over the internet on a web browser here that shows how we can make use of the latest technologies to do our jobs better. So I'm going to start with something that would be kind of in the domain of what you might call traditional artificial intelligence. So for many years, the teaching example of artificial intelligence was having the computer recognize different images. So there's a problem that we often encounter when studying silver in the Rijksmuseum. So 17th century silversmiths would be members of a guild, and each silversmith would have their own special maker's mark. And when they made a piece of silver, they would stamp their own mark on their silver, and then it would go to the guild where it would be assayed to see if the silver had the right amount of purity and so on. And that was stamped with a city mark and a letter year and so on. So now, when we encounter a piece of silver, we can find the mark on the silver, but the problem is that it's often been through 350 years of wear and tear. It's been polished, it's been scraped, sometimes the stamps weren't made at the perfect angle and so on. And so we developed an artificial intelligence that allows anyone with a cell phone or a computer connected to the internet to basically upload an image. For example, here I'll upload a blurry silver maker's mark, so taken with a low-quality image from a cell phone. And this goes to a server. It's identified, and this is a particularly challenging problem because with silver, it's not just a traditional image recognition problem, because silver can look completely different if you change the direction of the lighting, if there are things in the background, because of course it's reflecting the background and so on. So this very simple interface allows the user to upload an image, which is shown here in this query, and then based upon some novel techniques, the AI is able to go through its database of known marks and then to provide a ranking of what it thinks is the most likely outcome. So here you can see that it's taken this mark, and it thinks that this is the maker's mark of Jonas Gutsche, and it has basically 100% confidence of that. And you can see that the network gives us some examples of the marks made by that maker, so that the user can basically assess what they think is the most likely, because we're never trying to replace an expert, we're trying to magnify their own power. So a fairly traditional use of AI. So another example is shown here. This is 3 separate views of what many people consider to be the most important object in the Rijksmuseum. This is the Vianen ewer. It's essentially 2 pieces of silver, and this is from the same time as Rembrandt, and this shows the famous Kwab style or auricular style. Basically, it's a kind of psychedelic style that shows faces everywhere. faces everywhere you look. So the Rijksmuseum had an exhibition all about this KVAB style. This is a very important object because it's considered the pinnacle of the style, and it appears in more than 70 different Dutch 17th century paintings, so as a part of a still life in the background. And so the opening of the exhibition had this object projected 5 meters wide. And so we took pictures where the object was rotating around because we wanted to really show the object. And originally, the idea was to make a movie of 45 seconds. So we took, with a robot that was on a turntable, enough photos to last for 45 seconds. But then it turned out that this seemed really nice, so now the directors would like this movie to be 3 minutes long instead of 45 seconds long. And the problem is that if you would just hold a frame for 4 times as long, that it would look like it's claymation. It would sort of click and hold, click and hold, click and hold. It wouldn't feel fluid. It wouldn't flow. So AI to the rescue. What you're seeing here is the movie, and 1 frame in 4 was actually photographed, and 3 frames in 4 are hallucinated by a neural network. So, yeah, it's a bit jagged here because my computer is struggling to keep up at the moment. But so it's real, fake, 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 real, fake, fake, fake. So essentially, the neural network had to learn how this incredibly detailed, shiny, golden gilt object would look from angles that I didn't actually photograph, so that it could imagine what I would have seen if I had gone there. So hopefully you can't tell which photos are the real photos and which ones are the fakes. The public really had no idea. But now we have a smooth movie that lasts 3 minutes long. As another example, I turn now to a work on paper. This is a work by Rembrandt. Some people believe that this shows his wife, Saskia, although the argument against that is that Saskia was very high class, and Rembrandt never would have been able to talk Saskia into wearing these sort of peasant's clothes. But anyway, this is a beautiful drawing by Rembrandt. It's only 14 centimeters high, and we photographed it in extremely high resolution. But we also used a technique called raking light imaging. And with raking light imaging, it's really just what you would do with a torch, your cell phone camera, a flashlight or something. If you move the light source around in circles around an object, then all of the little details of its texture really pop out when the light is coming from the side instead of from the front. So we did that, but then it's complicated to interpret all of this because the color that you see when you take a picture is a combination of the color from the object itself, the color of the paper, the color of the ink, and so on, combined with the color coming from the texture of the object. And we wanted to see the texture. So again, artificial intelligence to the rescue. And artificial intelligence was trained to deconvolve the color of the object coming from its inherent color from the color that comes from its texture. And what I have here is a visualization that allows me to suck out the color and to render it as if this were just a piece of paper that had the exact same shape. So the network had to infer what the shape of the object is. And now the light source is sort of virtually attached to the mouse. So you can see that when I move, sorry, I'll go back here. When I move the mouse to the far left, now it's being illuminated from the far left. And you can see when I move it to the other side, that what was dark becomes light. And so this allows me to kind of virtually move a torch around and then to fade in the color of the object. And this allows me then to see, for example, that in these fine marks that Rembrandt made here, that is actually using a different instrument that's left an imprint in the paper. It's an extremely subtle one, but we can see this kind of carving into the paper here. You can see when I move the light source above that there are these periodic horizontal lines. Those are called chain lines. They come from the mold that was used to make the paper, and so we can use this to help identify where the paper came from and possibly date the drawing. And you'll even notice here that when I move the mouse to the side, you can see through your ability to infer the three-dimensionality by looking at this shaded color, you can see how the ink that he applied very heavily here along her shoulder and her right arm, left to us here, has actually caused the paper to pucker up and to bring the paper fibers together. So now we have this incredibly intimate picture of the three-dimensionality of the drawing that is also showing its conservation history. So down here, for example, you probably would not have noticed this were it not for the raking light image, but you can see that around here there is a lot of puckering and so on, and that's because the paper was ripped and it's been repaired. Moving on, but staying with works on paper, another problem that we often have when we're studying works on paper is that we would like to identify where the work came from. And often, a beautiful clue is that the paper that the artist used or the archivist used is watermarked. So basically, paper makers in the 17th century would, in the mold that they used to make their paper, embed a little wire symbol that they would attach to these chain lines that I mentioned, so that when the paper was made, it would be a little bit thinner there, and you could hold it up to the light, and the light would shine through, and you could see, ah, yes, this is a jester's cap with a 4 or whatever, and that would identify the paper mill where this was produced. So that's great, but the problem is that when you have a work on paper, the reason you care about it is that it's a work on paper. It's not just paper. It has ink, and it has ink on one side or both sides. So what we have trouble with is that when we take a work on paper and we would like to see the watermark, we can't because the ink gets in the way. So I trained a neural network together with a physics model to simulate how ink affects the view through a transmitted light view through paper, and made a neural network to reverse that process. So I'll demonstrate this by uploading 5 pages. Each of these pages will be uploaded to the server, and the game here is that we're trying to have the computer remove the ink from the front and the back, and that's an extra challenge because the ink that's on the back, when you shine light through it, it becomes blurred and scattered and fuzzy by the time it reaches the front. To remove the ink on the back and the front, to leave only what it would look like if there were no ink on the page. So I upload them to the web server, and it thinks about it. And what you're seeing here is left and right. I'll show you all 5 examples. This is what goes into the network on the left, and what comes out of the network. It's the sort of magic eraser, I call it, that removes the ink so that you can see the watermark. So here you can see this goat head with an angel on the top, and there are those chain lines that I mentioned again. There you see another view of it, really zoomed in, so the ink is magically gone, but it leaves behind all of the texture of the paper. Here you have another example where now the chain lines are running horizontally, and you can make out a watermark here. Another, and so you can see it's smart enough to even leave behind the stains, the water stains that are part of the paper, and to really only take out the ink. So again, we can easily identify the mark here, and so on. So there's another goat that you can see. By removing the ink to the best of its ability and leaving behind only the paper. And you can see it's even a little over-aggressive because in this case, the user uploaded something that has a ruler over here, and it took the ink off the ruler too. So now I'm going to zoom out a bit. So a problem that one faces in a major institution like the Rijksmuseum is that we have large collections, and that most of the collections never really see the light of day. So we have 177,000 plus, but as of 2016, 177,000 works on paper had been digitized, and it's all open access. But the problem is that people don't know what's there. They may search for something with our website, but if you don't know what's there, how could you ever discover it? So the idea here is that this is a single image that contains every one of the 177,000 works on paper in full resolution in the whole Rijksmuseum. And this has been assembled. It may look kind of like a weird modern art here. It's been assembled so that the neural network has put images nearby each other where it thinks that they're semantically related. So if the subject of the image is the same, but it's done that without any metadata. So all I give it is the images, and then it has to figure out what the image shows and to put things together. So to show you some of the fun things that it comes up with here, I'm going to zoom into this. So here, for example, you can see that it thinks that Rembrandt's self-portraits belong together. And it doesn't know that they're Rembrandt. It just thinks that they are stylistically and semantically related to each other. Another example. If I go over here, we have lots of prints of farm animals. So you see farm animals that the network thinks belong together because they're semantically related. Or if I come up here, I find ships. You can imagine that the Netherlands National Museum of Art and History has lots and lots of prints of ships and windmills and so on. So this then provides a way to explore the collection without having any idea what's in it a priori. But this is only, now it's kind of dated because this is from 2016. So to show you a much more modern approach, and something that I'm really excited about, this is an artificial intelligence cultural heritage search engine. So the idea here is that although the Rijksmuseum led the way in making its collections open access, free for any use, its image collections, now several other museums have followed suit. The Metropolitan Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, the RKD, so that's the art history sort of overview archives here in the Netherlands, the Web Gallery of Art, WikiArt, and so on. So I was able to gather 2.3 million open access images of cultural heritage, all free. What we have here then is 2.3 million images, but I did not take the descriptions along with them. I know where they came from, but I didn't take the metadata. So what you see here is a search engine in which this network understands English, and it also understands how to look at pictures. So I just have to type what I would like to find, and it will search in this semantic space and show me the 200 closest images. So I'm going to perform several examples here, fingers crossed. A woman wearing a blue dress holding a musical instrument. Okay. How about a red dress holding a musical instrument? Okay. Maybe Japanese print. Okay. How about a sculpture of a person holding a musical instrument? So you can see it's able to still function at a quite abstract level. I mean, this as a musical instrument is not so obvious, perhaps. And here, these are musical instruments. The search engine is able to perform queries that are quite abstract. For example, rotational symmetry. And it knows some art history, so we can say Escher. It knows how to recognize celebrities and so on, so Marilyn Monroe in a casino. For example, a woman holding, let's say, now, a woman reading by a window. It knows a bit about style, so we could say style of Picasso. It's all case insensitive. Yeah, that's a Picasso. How about style of Matisse? Yeah, that's a Matisse. And you can click them, and it will take you to the place from whence they came. Things that you would never expect a search engine to be able to find, for example, an unusual staircase. A colorful staircase, maybe, because I see a colorful one there. Yeah, nice. Twins. Quite an abstract notion. And I love that it brings this up. It's not wrong, right? Or how about wearing red? Yeah, all right, nice. So it can search by text, for example, as you've seen already, a Blanchard painting of Paris. And then we get lots of Blanchard paintings of Paris. But I can also give it the URL of something on the internet, or if I was using my cell phone, I could just take a picture of something that I see in the gallery. So I'm going to give it this URL. So how about copy image address? So if I give it a URL here, it will search by image. So I don't have to know that it's a Blanchard painting. It will just find other things related to that. But the idea that this is searching in a semantic space gives us the ability to do some pretty fun things. So what I'm doing here is I'm finding a location in a high-dimensional space where this image is centered, and I'm showing the 200 nearest things around that. But what I could do is start at that location where the query image is, and then I could lean in some direction. So for example, if I lean in the snow direction, so I start querying with an image, but I say, well, I want more snow. Then it finds paintings related to the first that are snowy. Or how about warm, glowing cafe lights? It can even search for things that don't exist. So for example, medieval airplane. It's not wrong. So this is the kind of thing where it's kind of like having a conversation with an alien, but this is surfacing images that I never would have been able to find otherwise, because the metadata never says an unusual staircase. It will never say a medieval airplane for something like this. So that is the way to zoom out and to see the whole collection, and not just our collection, but those of other museums. And now I'm going to switch back to talking about something called Operation Night Watch. And Operation Night Watch is a multi-year project that we're doing at the Rijksmuseum that has two parts. The first is a research phase, and the second will be a conservation phase, to look at Rembrandt's masterpiece, also his biggest painting, The Night Watch. So what I'm showing you now is an image that came from many years of work. This is, I believe, the world's largest image. It's 717 gigapixels. It's about 1 million pixels wide and 700,000 pixels tall, consisting of 8,439 high-resolution photos. And these were taken with the assistance of an artificial intelligence that could help me position the camera to account for the fact that the painting is moving forward and backward because there's breeze in the gallery and so on, and to stitch it all together in such a way that there are no seams whatsoever. So I'm going to turn on a little scale bar there in the lower right corner, and I'm going to zoom in to show you the kinds of things we can see with this image. So now we're down to the level where that scale bar is 0.5 millimeter wide in the real world. So I can see individual pigment particles. The sampling resolution of this image is 5 micrometers, and what that means is that if I move 1 pixel to the right in my image, I'm moving 5 millionths of a meter to the right in the real world. And to give you a sense of scale, a human red blood cell is 8 micrometers wide. So one of these pixels would fit easily inside a human red blood cell. So with this, I can basically see what I like to call the mystery of mastery. Rembrandt somehow knew, this is a self-portrait, by the way, a lot of people think, where he's painted himself peeking over between the shoulders of these two soldiers here. The mystery of mastery, Rembrandt understood how to manipulate paint so that we would look at these 3 little brushstrokes and see that as a glistening eye, even though here it would not be obvious at all that that's what this is. At the same time, we can zoom over and we can see something like this lead soap particle. So this is a conservation issue that comes from lead in the paints reacting with oil in the linseed oil, the binder of the paint. And this is a concern for conservation, so we need to know where these are everywhere. And we can see the conservation history. For example, if I zoom in on the famous girl, in and in and in and in, then here is a 1 millimeter wide retouch. So this is a place where a restorer, a conservator, has basically put a tiny little dab of paint, only 1 millimeter wide, to conceal this little blemish in the painting. So 717 gigapixels is nice, but no human or even a team of humans could possibly look at all of those pixels. It's just too much. But AI to the rescue. Given that I have this search engine technology that can take a giant pile of images and search them, then what I can do is take the night watch and cut that up into 14 million little tiles and put them into the same search engine. And then I can run queries like, as I'll show you here, quote, a photomicrograph with small white spots on a red background. So what it's doing is it's taking that query and it's searching the whole painting at 5 micrometer resolution, and it makes a little heat map here that lights up where it claims, if I zoom in, I will find small white spots on a red background, which would be a lead soap problem, to come back to what I showed you before. And sure enough, if I zoom all the way in, there's white spots on a red background. So now I can use the AI to leverage my ability to look at the painting. To go one step further, we don't just take high-resolution photos, we also take chemical scans using a technology called X-ray fluorescence. And so these scans enable us to go over the whole painting and at 100 million separate spots to perform X-ray fluorescence, and that lets us see which elements are present in the painting. So we can see a map of where is the lead, where's the iron, where's the cobalt, all of the elements that are heavier than aluminum. And that's interesting to do because many times Rembrandt painted something and then he painted over it so that we can't see what's there, but the chemical scans can penetrate and bring those out. But it's hard. If I'm looking at an iron map, what does it mean? So the AI can understand the connection between the chemistry and the color, and it can make a rendition, shown here on the right, of what it thinks the painting would look like if it hadn't been painted over. So for example, this pole arm has a little red ribbon tied to it, and this bloke here originally had a feather that Rembrandt painted out. And so this is able to, this is an early stage, but to bring it back to life. And I'm going to finish with something that was really put in front of the public for 4 months. Really an exciting opportunity to showcase the public impact of artificial intelligence at the Rijksmuseum. So what you're seeing here on the left is the night watch. It's out of its frame, and this canvas that's around the edge is part of a restoration that happened in 1976. And on the right, so I should, for those of you not aware, I should mention that the image on the left is big. The night watch is big. It's 4.5 meters wide. Whereas the image on the right is a small copy made by Gerrit Lundens. We think that the main figure here, Frans Bonning-Koch, commissioned this small 80-centimeter wide painting because he really liked the night watch and he wanted one for home. So you'll notice here that the painting, the copy on the right, has features that the one on the left doesn't have. And the reason for that is that the Night Watch was originally in a room called the Kloveniersdule. This was the sort of joint meeting room for all of the civic guard companies, the different districts in Amsterdam. And it was painted in 1642, but when it was moved from the Kloveniersdule to the Stadshuis, the city hall, in 1715, the room they wanted to put it in was not big enough. So they had to cut off the top to make it fit within the ceiling, and they wanted to put it between two doors, and those doors were too close together. So they cut off the left side, and they cut off the right side, and they cut off the bottom, and they just threw them away as far as we know. So the question is, can I use the copy on the right, which was painted on panel by a different painter with different palettes and a different style, to imagine what the Night Watch would have looked like if it had not been cut down? So to see why this is a challenge, what I'll do here is, again with the assistance of artificial intelligence, I have here a view that takes whatever's under the mouse and it makes sure that it's the same in both images. So here, if I put it on this guy's nose, then it aligns there, and you can see that Gerrit Lundens was not really faithful with geometry. You can see that this pole arm is in and out. You could also say, well, he's no Rembrandt, right? So there's Rembrandt and there's Gerrit Lundens. To be fair, this is a much smaller painting, but to be fair, there's only one Rembrandt. So the question is, given that the geometry is wrong, the colors are wrong, the style is wrong, but it does seem that Lundens was faithful in retaining everything, can I have a neural network help to recover what the original would have looked like? And so there were several stages, which I'll only just fly through. So here's the Night Watch with the edges cut off. The first stage is to figure out how to correct, because of perspective, Lundens' depiction, because we think he was standing in the corner by the fire and he was looking up at it diagonally, and so he got some of the proportions wrong. So that's this. And then the next thing is, already you can see that, as I showed you before, these are not really aligned very well. So the next thing we can do is have a second artificial intelligence take this and bring it to this, so that now the Lundens copy and the Night Watch are very, very closely aligned. Still the palette's wrong, the style's wrong, and so on. And then, now that we have this nicely aligned pair, now I can do what I call taking the artificial intelligence to art school. And I can sort of teach it how to translate from the Lundens style, which you see here, to Rembrandt's style. And once it's good at that, then I can ask it to translate the edges of the Lundens into the Rembrandt style. And that's what I will do now. So this is the artificial intelligence reconstruction of what the Night Watch might have looked like if the edges had not been cut off. So to be clear, here is where the Night Watch ends. So everything outside of that is part of the reconstruction. And you can see that it seems to have done a good job in making the palette continuous, in continuing the style, Rembrandt's chiaroscuro shading, for which he's quite famous. And a real delight for me was that in my effort to make it mimic everything that it found, it also learned how to hallucinate cracks, because these are imagined cracks. But that makes sense because the real Night Watch has cracks as well. So that's it for me for this talk. I hope that I've given you a sense that a museum is, I hope you knew this already, is more than the place where art goes to die, and that in fact we're very much at the leading edge of technology, and that artificial intelligence is sometimes very overt, but it can be incredibly useful in many hidden circumstances. But it's really a big part of helping us help the world access, preserve, and understand its cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was even more impressive, not in rehearsal, but right now. And I invite you all for drinks right now in the lounge, and I hope to see you tomorrow morning. Have a nice evening. Well done.